Hello, everyone. Welcome to StreamHorseTV Tokyo Takeaways, where we are discussing all the action at the Tokyo Olympics in equestrian. And we're joined by the lovely Catie Staszak, CEO of Catie Staszak Media and international FEI show jumping commentator. Thank you so much for joining us, Catie.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Nat.
I just changed our background so it could be our motif. So we have concluded the eventing portion of the Olympics. I'm, of course, on a low because it always goes by so fast, and it seemed like it all was a whirlwind, as it always is. Cross country dismantled the standings. Show jumping kind of dismantled the standings, but we have history that was made on two specific accounts. And I want to ask you first, who you think the format changes impacted the most? And leading into that message is that it definitely didn't impact Great Britain because they had like 27 rails in hand going in. But who do you think it impacted in the team competition as everything sort of shook out? And then we can talk about Great Britain.
Yeah, well, like you said, my first response would have been, it certainly did not impact Great Britain. Wow, what a performance. I mean, the best score in the history of the games. It was just incredible. They finished with 3 rails in hand still. It was just so impressive. I think it impacted a lot of teams, especially lower on the leaderboard, because with the no drop score, there are all these different penalties now for substitution, for not completing. You can actually finish on a score even if you don't complete, because there's just a penalty for that. So you saw some very high scores at the bottom of the leaderboard. I think very much so for countries like Germany that fell down the leaderboard a little bit. And I think that was probably the biggest shock. But then you saw other teams just really rise to the occasion. And I think you saw that from countries like Australia and France that really benefited from that. I think it was really exciting. It just made for a very exciting competition from the team standpoint. And for anyone watching that isn't super familiar with the sport, to be able to understand that and know that every score counts. I was actually reading an interview from show jumping chef to keep Robert Rigland from the US. And I was really surprised by his answer about the new format, and that he is really excited about it. Some riders are upset because obviously it limits the amount of opportunities, but he was genuinely excited because I do think it's good for competition and for fans, and that's what we all want.
It's great for competition. It really ups the ante. It might not be good for pressure. In this case, we had some just class act, top ranked, world-renowned riders, including some long-term veterans. So I think they were really holding it down for everyone. Not that they didn't knock rails down. Andrew Hoy didn't, which we'll get to in a minute. But it seemed like it just kind of intensifies everything and promotes a really high level of sport. So, and then, we had these 2 top guys who started off on top. Mikkel Young edged Oliver Townend out in dressage for the gold medal spot. And then Townend came in and had this flawless cross country. Mikkel Young had the Frangible 11-point penalty and couldn't really ever gain ground back in the jumping, which was unfortunate. But people were knocking rails. It wasn't that hard of a course, in my opinion, but people were having trouble with the triple, it looked like, and people's horses were tired, which happens. And that kind of happened for our USA guys in the team competition. We did get a Philip Dutton diary entry after it all wrapped up, and he was really proud being on the team. He was proud of his teammates, but they each had a couple rails, and luckily for them with the new format, it didn't matter. They all were kind of even the way they performed and the penalties they accrued. So it wasn't like one of them completely crashed and burned, where it messed up everybody else. But he was a little disappointed. He said it wasn't what they planned on and they didn't jump the way they wanted, but seemed like the horses were feeling it. He definitely said his horse Z was feeling it, the effects of cross country day. And we can just note quickly that everybody was jumping twice, which back in the day when you had individual eventing in the Olympics separately, separate horse and rider combinations, the jumping would all be at once, but the individuals were separate. Now in the new most recent change, they all had to jump twice, right? And so what did the individuals do who weren't on a team? Did they have to jump twice?
So not everyone jumped twice. Only the top 25 individual riders following the team final moved on to one more round of jumping. And when you talk about how did the new format impact the competition, well, for the individual competition, it had the greatest impact because now all of a sudden you've introduced a fourth round, which is in no other eventing competition worldwide. So it's a complete unknown for every single combination out there. How is my horse going to react to yet another round of jumping? What they did was they made a very short course. It was only 9 fences, 12 jumping efforts, and that's where the triple combination really came into play. I mean, very few did not have a rail in that triple combination. It was very careful. It walked a little bit tighter. Oh, it walked a little bit longer than it ended up being. It ended up riding quite tight, and everyone kind of came in there with a lot of gusto, and then all of a sudden just kind of falling through the combination. Not to mention, it was painted white to resemble these beautiful Japanese cherry blossoms. And you had kind of the painting of the blossoms only on the end of the railings. And then in the middle of the poles was just solid white. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot to catch the attention of the horse or back it off. So you saw a lot of rails fall there.
Right. Yes, including Philip, who we see right here. This is not the triple combination cherry blossom ask, but he definitely knocked 1 or 2 there and had come in flat, and that's what a lot of people did. It was tight, right? So they were needing to be gathered up for it.
Yeah, it ended up being pretty technical in the end, at least for the individual. And I think that's because you really saw a lot of fatigue come into play because it just was grueling. It's a whole other round and that they're not used to. And you saw really who was still fresh and who wasn't. And you had to be incredibly accurate to produce another clear round. And we didn't see that many. I was absolutely blown away by Julia Krajewski, the winner. She was just absolutely sensational, performing under pressure and giving us another very historic moment. We have the very first female individual gold medalist in the sport of eventing, and that is a celebration. And, you know, now we're going to keep it very real here, right? And that was enough to get me to wake up and have some jubilation following a night of food poisoning. So it was a really momentous occasion.
We hope and wish and know that Julia made your day and made you feel better in the midst of despair and distraught and destruction. She was so great. She just pointed down at her horse after her last jump, and she did it. I mean, nobody really ever got close to her. The other, women were, I do want to shout out again to the women who were in the hunt. Nobody really got near Julia, but for a little while there, Laura Collette of Great Britain's gold medal winning team was in there. She knocked a few down. And then Janelle Price didn't have her best effort in show jumping on Grovine de Rev, but she's a powerhouse and we'll see her again for sure. She was in 12th when they went in, I think. And then the youngest rider in the entire competition on a horse who she brought up since he was a 5-year-old and she was a 15-year-old. She's 22, Leah Siegel of Austria. I was really just enjoying watching her cross country round and her show jumping. And she hit a bad spot on that last jump and she kind of got in a bad spot and knocked that last rail down. But otherwise she was clear, and what a great performance for such a young first-time Olympian and a horse who the commentator said had she made from scratch, which I thought was really cute. But hats off to Julia. We have a female gold medalist in individual eventing. Thank goodness. Finally, we have so many powerhouse eventer females in history, and none of them had claimed gold. So congratulations to Julia. She just completely broke into tears, hugging her groom and petting her horse. And this wasn't her top mount, right? Originally for Tokyo.
Yeah, not to mention she sold her very top horse to Michael Young, and she ended up finishing above him. So kudos to her. What a gift for developing horses, an eye for horses, and certainly a talented rider to boot. And the pressure was certainly on her. You know, she took over the lead after the team final, and you know, she really could not afford to have a rail. It came very tight in the end, and she added just 0.4 time penalties to her score, which happened to be the identical penalty score that she got in cross country. So that was a lucky number for her.
A couple
and
little
that kept her on top.
Yeah, a 0.4 here and there doesn't really terribly affect anything. And we can, since you mentioned Chipmunk, we can talk about the guys. So Mikel Young, 2-time reigning Olympic gold medalist, on his just sensational partner, Sam, who's since been retired. And then Oliver Townend coming in on Ballamore class, who hadn't finished worse than 4th in a top level competition. And he actually looked pretty good. It was that, it was that vertical. He just got in a bad spot in the individual. And in the team, he, you know, actually navigated a lot of the technical parts really well, as he does. He had the rail coming into the double, and then in the individual final where he really had to make something up, he couldn't afford anything against him. He had another rail, unfortunately. Again, he did all the technical parts well, and it was at the second fence, a vertical, and the horse just kind of got underneath it a little bit. It's a little bit deep, and then he rode the rest of it beautifully. It just wasn't his day, but look, he still comes away with the team gold medal and his Olympic debut, and so much more to come from him. He was tremendous these games, and it really proved that every phase is crucial and plays a role in the competition, which is what we want to see. Yes, and unfortunately, I'll share my screen again here. Our friend Mikel Young had this frangible device, which gave him the 11-point penalty, and so coincidentally, ironically, or whatever you want to call it, Tammy Smith, who was I'm going to scroll here. Tammy was watching at the fence. She's our USA reserve alternate. She went to 5-star at Land Rover on her just badass horse, My Bomb, who is just incredible, and I'm in love with him, and he's just my crush right now. So as coincidence or the stars aligning, whatever it is, would have it, she's standing there watching this, and she posted watching his frangible pin get pulled was gutting, and that the horse barely touched it with his right front toe. Hopefully there's some change to make it more fair. And, you know, Mikel is posting that he got the jump. He doesn't understand. They did the appeal, which you were saying that means FEI will file a report, and there will probably be a continuing conversation about this. But I did want to bring up this photo that's probably all over social media already. But there he is. He clearly nicked the front with, as Tammy says, his right toe or whatever. And they filed an appeal, and it was rejected. And so he says, sadly, the protest is not accepted. He gets the 11 points. So hard to get this at the Olympics. So again, echoing my statements before, it's just a bummer. I mean, these are important safety measures. Whether they should be a penalty is a conversation. And how hard they need to be hit or how they need to be taken down to come dislodged are two conversations I think that we're going to be seeing when we have the 2-time consecutive Olympic gold medalist having this really pull him out of contention. And I want to answer, like, the question of that article was, did a frangible affect the medals? Well, yeah, it absolutely did. It's not to say that frangible devices shouldn't be there.
To play devil's advocate a little bit, sure, it had a big impact on his score. But he did have rails and jumping. He wasn't faultless everywhere else. And it's a level playing field for everyone. Everyone jumped that jump. That's the way it was. Discussion is great. This will be scrutinized. This will be looked at. A discussion needs to be had. Maybe the amount of penalties needs to be adjusted or looked at, or, different alternatives. But safety is paramount and a level playing field is paramount. And we saw the medals had by others who jumped that same fence and did not have that issue. And there's a little bit of luck involved too. So, just to play devil's advocate a little bit, there's certainly another side. Yes, it had a big impact on his score, and it did put him behind the 8 ball with catch-up work to do. Absolutely. Yes. And so so then you feel in with more pressure. And sure, could that have caused a rail and jumping, a domino effect? Absolutely. But I do think, everyone jumped that same fence, was presented with the same test. And safety has to be the most important thing. So yes, a discussion to be had. But hey, it's nice to have a new champion. We made some history, and we will certainly see many more wins from Michael Young. There's no question about it. But absolutely, a lot of discussions will be had.
I get the impression, Catie, you're not one who likes somebody to be like a freight train who wins everything.
It's nice to see different people win. It makes for good competition. We had some history today. It's boring when the same person wins every single time.
I grew up
I'm a fan of the underdog.
The early 90s of the Dallas Cowboys, unfortunately, it was my childhood. So but we were saying off air the other day, especially in eventing, but in all equestrian sport, this is why you don't see those the dominance we've actually seen in eventing by people like Michael Young and Oliver Townend is surprising. It's very hard to just always win because the sport is so detailed, and you need your horse to have a good day, and there is a bit of luck. And I completely agree with you. Your horse has to jump the jump. I think there is an impetus on the organizations and the organizers to make sure that the riders know how hard the pins are set or whatever the settings are, so that they know what job they need to do, and whether they can brush it or crash through it like some do on some cross-country jumps. But yeah, I mean, this is the sport, and those guys are certainly top of their game, and it's disappointing, but as you said, everybody's jumping the same jumps. Shout out to Sam Watson of Ireland, who also, I think, brushed it, and they were kind of saying that was a shame as well. But he had an awesome round. And just one more huge highlight. We mentioned the youngest rider in the whole eventing competition. Philip Dutton's the oldest on Team USA in all sports, but the oldest eventer is actually
Andrew Hoy,
who
he was amazing
on his dressage score. He's the only finisher on his dressage score, and that is why, my friends, he is Andrew Hoy, and he has been to 8 Olympics. And he and Philip were actually teammates on the gold medal winning team for Australia in Atlanta. I'm waiting for a photo up from Tokyo. I'm hoping they snapped a photo, but oh my gosh, Andrew's horse is phenomenal, but Andrew is phenomenal.
Oh my gosh, it was absolutely brilliant to see him do that. And again, they didn't jump 3 rounds, they jumped 4 rounds. So to be the only combination to be able to finish on that dressage score was just absolutely remarkable, and a very deserving result for Andrew Hoy. My hat is off to him. I found him so exciting and so thrilling, and an inspiration to many, that you can stay in the sport for a very long time at the highest level. Of course, it requires a whole lot of work, fitness, dedication, but what a legendary horseman, and that was fully on display in Tokyo.
It was just a piece of art seeing him show jump. And that horse, I don't think that's the oldest, most experienced horse in the bunch either. So Yes, cheers to Andrew. And what did he do afterward? He went over and he congratulated Mikkel Young's father on Germany having an awesome team and said, when it doesn't go your way, it'll make you stronger. So awesome. Hope we see him and Philip Dutton again in an Olympics together, setting records of how many Olympics and how old they are. So in moving forward, we are going into show jumping, your favorite. And
I could not be more excited. It's a great group. It's going to be a sensational competition. It gets underway tomorrow. It'll be bright and early for us here in the US, while it'll be in the evening over in Tokyo. And yeah, I just cannot wait. The new format very much kind of threw show jumping and up in the air. In addition to the three rider teams, the individual competition is actually going to happen first, which we did not see in dressage or eventing. So that will be very interesting. So we start with the individual qualifier tomorrow, and then we have to wait until Friday to have the team final.
So what's your head scratcher?
So you can bring 4 riders forward. One is the traveling reserve. In show jumping, you have the option to use all 4 riders across the individual and team competitions. But in the team competition, there can only be 3 riders. And at the horse inspection, you had to declare who your reserve rider was. And the US had previously not announced theirs. So when they were asked, their response was McLean Ward, which kind of made my brain explode. You just didn't see it coming. You know, this is his 5th Olympic Games. He is a sensational rider. He's been a team anchor. He's a team leader. And of course, the whole group is very strong. But you just did not see that coming at all.
No.
So he will not compete. He will be cheering on Team USA. And I think he will be the most qualified backup that you could possibly have, except for the fact that Harry Smolders is actually going to be the team reserve for the Dutch. So between the 2 of them, that is a sensational group of backups. And he'll certainly be part of that team in the form of guidance, advice, and knowledge. And that is tremendous to have there. So hats off to McLean for being a real team player.
Is this for sure? And, you know, I'll say as a side note, if you're not in the horse world, or if you're in the horse world but not in the show jumping world, he's kind of a household name.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think of show jumping and you think immediately of McLean, Beezy, and Margie. You know, those are really the 3 that everybody seems to know. Of course, Kent Farrington is sensational, and he's coming up there with that group, but the others a little bit older and, you know, real household names. So it will be interesting. Is it for real? I believe so. I mean, that could be, you know, a surprise for us, but I don't. He is not listed on the start list for the individual qualifier tomorrow, and he was designated as the team reserve. So you know, of course, there is the option for a substitution should something happen. But this is the way it's been set.
But let me ask you, Catie, because you follow these riders all over the world, and you watch their every move, at least these ones who are at Tokyo probably for the most part. Any indication why this is the choice?
You know, it's a very strong team across the board. You know, my only guess would relate to the horse. This horse had an injury last year and has come back to form, and it's a great opportunity for him to be part of the team. I don't know if McLean maybe thought he wasn't, you know, the most ready horse, or the other horses were, you know, more ready, or if this was just a team decision. We really haven't heard. McLean has been a member of this team for so long. So he knows better than any of us what's best for the team and what's best for him and his horse. So I trust that. And whatever the decision was based on, you know, it was for the best thing for the team and the best thing for that horse.
And you mentioned, just quickly, let's cover mixing and matching. You mentioned that with the new format in show jumping, they could mix and match, as in they could put 3 members of their 4-person team in for individual eligibility, and then they can put 3 different ones. Do you think they might throw him into the team, or they've announced it's both?
So if that would have happened, we would have seen him come in the individual, and he's not listed in the start list for tomorrow. We have seen some teams utilizing that format. I believe Israel is utilizing that option. They're putting their young team member Teddy Block in individual, and Danny G. Wallman will sit out individual and just compete in the team. So we're seeing them implement that strategy, but I haven't seen it with Team USA.
Okay, well, McLean, we salute your sportsmanlike conduct and your team playing attitude, and we will see what happens in individual show jumping. When we meet again, Catie, we will have some results, actually. So
yes, we'll have our first medals.
Yes, this is so much fun, and we've seen so much incredible horsemanship, incredible horses and riders. We've seen so much talent, and I know we're going to see more. So we absolutely appreciate you sharing your insights and commentary, and we will see you soon. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me. We'll talk to you soon.
Yes, and I'll just throw in here that we are doing a social media campaign for a $300 gift prize from Ride Bedford. So please follow StreamHorseTV on Instagram to find out more. And you can also follow us at Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you so much, Catie. See you soon. Enjoy the jumping and take care.